Good evening and welcome to the We Are Rise show. I'm your host, Brett C. Collins. How you doing out there? It's a very hot day. Yes, Darrell. It's Africa hot. It's balls hot. It is hot. It's like 96 degrees today. You know, I was expecting humidity, but it's like really dry where I'm at. I'm like, where's the humidity? It only comes at night when it rains, apparently. I don't know what's going on about that. So welcome to tonight's show. What's going on? A lot of, let's just say, I'm not going to say, news that's like forward thinking, but it seems like in some way tonight's show, the 2016 has called and she wants its narratives back. Apparently there's some revisiting to some old narratives, maybe reflexively to what the Post have said in the past. You have the Kayfabe ceasefires. Apparently they don't matter. I mean, anytime there's a situation where there's a ceasefire or something of this nature, it's a short-term thing. It's a pause. It means nothing. Right now, you have to look at Iran as a bunch of pirates, okay? And since we're the new pirates on the sea, we're going to go rob it and steal it. That's the bottom line. Because the proxy war that's taking place under the veil of NATO, who basically is the controlling mechanism, or several countries in the EU that control, let's just say, a great swath of Iran. Well, that's all being taken down while simultaneously the parasites, they leech off us, they sponge off us like Spain, which we're about to basically shoo fly away. So welcome in to the We Are Rise show. We're going to get to a lot of different stuff. I want to say hello to Pill.net, hello YouTube, and yes, hello on Rumble. A lot of stuff to get to tonight. I'm going to drop this right now. So let's get into it tonight's subject matter. JD Vance has something really good to say, and I think in some way you have to consider that. Welcome in pipe hitters, welcome in bitch slappers. This is what it's about. They got out of line, and we slapped them in the face. We basically said to Iran, no more. Okay, we're not going to deal with it. We're going to come there. We're going to fucking blowtorch your place down. I told you months ago we already have control of Karg Island. I wouldn't be surprised. We already have control of Karg Island in general. But what difference does that make? I mean, does it really change anything at this point unless we could prove it? No, it doesn't. But the point being is that President Trump had referenced that today in Turkey, in Ankara. He basically said, yeah, we're going to have to take Karg Island. We're going to have to seize the oil, and they should. It's over. I think it's already done. Why say that now, setting this up when it doesn't happen, when it's already has the pretext that it's already been certain in some way? They knew that this was going to, let's just say, fall their way. We don't know what happened in NATO per se. I mean, look, there were some deals that were made. Greenland was discussed. Many other different topics that popped up on the radar that we just don't know. We just don't know. President Trump was very coy today and leaving NATO and expressing a great deal of frustration, as many people see the Iran war as, but I don't see it that way. I think in some way is that this was a temporary thing, and he put it on pause, not for the funeral of Khomeini. Do you think he did that for the Ayatollah and for the people? That was all psyop, okay? This was on pause because he was going to Turkey for a NATO meeting. He wanted to see what the proxy army of Iran was willing to do, what they're willing to negotiate for, their surrender, or maybe the surrender of the Strait of Hormuz and the opportunity to seize control of it. And what we heard today is that, and yesterday, we're hitting Iran while we were there in Turkey. So basically, he was telling the proxy army that controls Iran, hey, look, we're not going to take your fucking shit anymore. That's it. We're done. You're all scum. We eliminated leaders here, there, that. And you know what? And what's our takeaway from NATO? Doesn't matter. His attitude is just simply, look, if I don't get my agreements done, well, here we go. We're going to obliterate Iran. In fact, we're just going to take the oil. And you know what? The Strait of Hormuz doesn't matter. We're going to control it. And they have no money. No money. No money is going to be resurfaced, recycled back. They're not going to get their proxy army money. It's over. It doesn't matter about the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, in some way. Oman is making a new inroads in this, so they'll be going through there. But at this point, what difference does it make? Because if we take the oil and we control the Strait of Hormuz, who cares? It really doesn't matter. This was a show of force for NATO. NATO's like, yeah, we're all on board with it. Meanwhile, the EU and many other, let's just say, conglomerates that are backing this whole situation up behind the scenes are not happy with this. But it doesn't matter. There's no more control. What President Trump is showing everybody is that there is no will by NATO in any way to stop the United States, nor can they what? Participate and help the United States out, because this whole thing would be against what they've set up for centuries to do. The bottom line is that Iran is the proxy, let's just say, bastard child of the EU and NATO. They all get a cut of it, and President Trump is taking it down. And once that is done, he's setting the preconditions. Once that is taken down, then the idea that we're going to move off of NATO, we're slowly telling Spain, who's turned into a very, let's just say, serious, I'd say, communist state. They're actually going radical socialist regime, but I would say they're more communist these days. Spain is going to be cut off. President Trump instructed the Treasury Secretary yesterday, where he actually said today, we're cutting them off. No more trade deals, no more nothing. They're fucked. They're totally fucked. Watch that nation go into what? Watch them go into rioting. Watch them overthrow the government. A lot of things are going to happen. Let's listen to J.D. Vance today.
We will sit down at the table and negotiate and see if the smart people in that system can take over from the crazy people. Well, here's the basic deal that we cut. The basic deal that we cut was, we'll lift our blockade if you stop shooting at ships. But if you shoot at ships, we are going to punch back, and we're going to punch back harder than ever before. That was the deal. They said they would stop shooting at ships. And what happened 24 hours ago? They started shooting at ships again. Now, they were good. They were well behaved for about a week, but then they started shooting at ships. So the deal is very simple. If they shoot at ships, we're going to knock the hell out of them. And it's that simple. And that's the basic way it's going to work.
That's it. That's the bottom line. They want to go back to the racketeering. They want to go back to the exploitation. They want to control the area, is what they have done all this time. And we basically have now, let's just say, deviated from this. The inconsistencies of what's going on and that you can see, there's no deal to be made. There's no deal that's going to be finalized in some way. We have no choice other than seize the island, control the oil, and force a capitulation. Forget about the nuclear stuff. All that stuff is secondary or tertiary. It's about the oil. It's about the blackmail. It's about the control of the strait. That's it. Once you starve these people out, you don't have to hit bridges. You don't have to hit vital, let's just say, areas like hospitals or waterways or anything that would cause a great famine or death of the citizen population. You don't want to do that. You don't want to create that habit. You steal their lifeblood away from them, and you know what? Let them scream uncle. They could say uncle in every fucking language they want to, but they will have to beg for mercy this time around. And the question is, will they? And how is that going to affect all the NATO countries that get a piece of the pie, or at least some of the EU countries through the Bank of London and many other exploiters out there get a piece of that pie? We don't know. We don't know, but the next phase is going to be great. And I don't really care anymore. I don't care anymore about Iran. I don't care anymore about all this stuff. Do what you need to do, okay? People like, well, they're going to just carpet bomb them into death like Gaza. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that because, you know what? It's not going to look good, okay? The rest of us that look at this and say, look at Gaza, we don't want that to happen. They're not going to go and just blow up 90 million people, okay? They're not going to do that. So stop with that. They're going to take their lifeblood, which will starve the people and force the people maybe, okay, to have an inkling to say, you know what? It's time to hang some motherfuckers, just like we have here. It's time to hang somebody. Let's get some vigilante justice. It is spreading, and it should spread through Iran, and that's what we should hope for. Moving on. This is Axios, because I got a lot of stuff I want to cover. I want to go into it real briefly because I want to get into a lot of the subject matter that just happened. But this is about NATO, and I'll keep it short and sweet. President Trump hijacked NATO summit within hours of touching down in Turkey, threatening allies, declaring the Iran ceasefire over as Washington and Tehran lurched toward renewed war. Interesting how that combination settled in very simply as he touched down. The big picture, the carefully choreographed Ankara summit unraveled into the Trump show, with the agenda quickly overtaken by President Trump's grudge against allies who sat out of the Iran war. Is it about that, per se, or are we utilizing Iran for something else? Okay? All right? It's not just that it's a proxy of this in some way. He's trying to see who is really aligned with us, meaning who is taking money on the back end, who doesn't want to what? Participate in this. That's one area of understanding. It's not just the exploitation, the sponging, the leeching, the parasitical relationship that NATO has on the United States. We're getting fucked by both holes on both ends because of what? They know there are many different allies inside of NATO through the EU are getting their cut. And the reason they were told to sit out of this in some way is because they wanted the United States to lose this in some way. I don't know how they thought we were going to lose this. Maybe they thought they could wait President Trump out. Maybe they thought in some way, hey, you know what? Not wait him out, but see that the United States would capitulate, that our modus operandi, our will to say, we don't want another war. We don't want it to be Gaza. Now it's too fucking late. We're going to burn the whole fucking thing down. Because if it takes burning down NATO to take out Iran, I'm all for it. Because I am done with NATO. Fuck Spain. Fuck these parasitical leeches. It is time to burn this motherfucker down. It's time to go pipe hitting. Yes, pipe hitting. Bring the blowtorch and light this motherfucker up. If this is how we take down NATO, then so be it. I'm all in on it, and I don't care what the fallout's going to be. Hey, if we take the oil, we're going to become even more richer. And we're going to sell it to what? All the nations that they were selling it to. And we're going to grow bigger and bigger. And who's going to do anything about it? Who's going to do anything about it? Nobody. Turkey stayed out of the war, as Trump said. They're not getting involved. They don't fucking care. We're going to sell them F-35s. We're going to sell them shit. They're going to be the next what? Pipe hitter on the block. So they can what? Abstain from what? Taking incoming from Israel. That's probably. Not to mention some ways, China's out of this, Russia's out of this. Nobody's getting involved. There's a reason why. So on this quick trip to Turkey, Trump opened up new wounds and rubbed salt in their face. This is Axios. This is not a middle-of-the-road rag. This is a straight-up fucking lefty rag. Threatening to cut off all trade with Spain. Yes, we're cutting them off. They're parasitical. They're socialists. They're almost on the verge of collapsing into a communist state. Yes, they are. Hopeless for refusing to let U.S. use its military bases to strike Iran. They're done. All of them did that because they were told to stand down. Deeming talks with Tehran a waste of time and suggesting U.S. can take out every single bridge in Iran. I don't know if we're going to take down all of them, but it's a good possibility we might hit some of them. Not the lifeblood in some way, but enough that will, let's just say, put a little eyesore in there, give their eyes a little redness in some way. Renewing his demand to acquire Greenland, which triggered a full-blown crisis in January and prompted the Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen to pledge that Denmark would defend its territory. Please do it in some way. Please defend your territory. Because when the United States actually does leave, you will be begging for mercy. All the money that we give to subsidize NATO goes to these countries to prop these countries up. It's not really for military. It's to subsidize them just like Canada. They're feeding off the tit. Do you understand it? This is not a healthy, beneficial relationship. It's parasitical by nature. The $99 billion or trillions of dollars or whatever we spent, close to $1 trillion over time, is to prop these countries up, to keep them afloat so they can continue on with their relative lifestyle. It's not about militarily, like in some way. Look at UK. Look at France. Their military sucks. None of their military is what? We have a bunch of what? Nukes there. Doesn't mean anything. Floating the removal of all soldiers out of Europe alarming allies, which have relied on the U.S. security umbrella for decades, praising China, saying, big fan, yep, making it abundantly clear, I'm not happy with NATO. No! And what is he saying? President Trump delivered a marathon of high-energy performance at NATO summit, holding 4 separate press availabilities, plus a solo press conference and taking unscripted questions. The president commanded every room, gave allies so much needed tough love, and left the summit with a stronger NATO and a more united free world. I disagree. I think he's telling them, be prepared. Be prepared for what's coming. If you're not going to like the United States' hegemony, us expanding our territory, Cuba, Venezuela, South America, Greenland, well, too fucking bad. It's time to move on. He's letting them know, because there's going to be, when we pull out of the Middle East, and we're going to do so very soon, that someone else is going to be the big walking stick there, and it could be Turkey, because they got the second largest army. And that's what President Trump was presenting today to Erdogan. Whether you like him or not, it doesn't even matter. All right? You have to worry about another war that could happen with Israel taking out Egypt and maybe wanting to take on Turkey. But we're not going to do that. We're not going to be a part of this anymore. That's what you need to consider. That's why President Trump was there. He was suggesting in some way, we're pulling out. It's over. We're no longer going to be there. Someone else is going to be the new defense or the on-guard in some way, the avant-garde there to make sure that the Middle East doesn't go batshit crazy. We are no longer going to have these entanglements, and it's probably going to be Turkey, especially the ones they're going to be relying on right now, as long as the promises are made and kept as a NATO ally, that they will be the fine line between Russia encroaching, what they're worried about, which they don't have anything to worry about, and Israel going half-cocked and wanting to launch missiles against Israel and what have you. Okay, let's get into the big news. I'll get to your thank yous and hellos really quickly. Let me just move on right away. So this is some of the topics that are coming back into the foray. 2016, she wants her narratives back. Well, in the original Q post, we heard that there was missiles that were shot off at President Trump's Air Force One. We don't know about that. We don't know anything about that. We've heard many assassination attempts on Trump's life in public and behind the scenes. There was a book that was supposed to be written after the first administration detailing at least 12, but they scrapped that book. They didn't want that information out. There was discussions that some type of bullets have reached Mar-a-Lago, some drone attacks at Mar-a-Lago. That was scrubbed. We didn't hear that. So there's so many different things that are up in the air that are suspect. We don't know. But here, a lot of stuff regarding President Trump and Air Force One. Now, the bridge Air Force One went to England, UK, prior to this. So President Trump took the next one over, their old Air Force One, for some apparent reason. We'll get into it. So the threat assassination on Trump. Trump received, by his own words, 2 lists from intel agencies that he's the number one on the kill list. Now, was this part of the entanglement to say, you know what, fuck it, we don't care? Because remember, who's Iran? Who's controlling Iran? So did this come from the EU? Did this come from the cabal? The banksters, the Bank of London, what have you? He also said he won't be traveling back and home in Air Force One, and he will be staying in Europe, and it's going to be sent to 2 or 3 military bases within the EU. Do you believe this? I'm not really sure what I believe.
Stephen Nelson from the New York Post. I'd like you to address speculation that you're leaving Ankara not in the new Air Force One because of security concerns involving Iran. You've spoken today twice about them possibly assassinating you and possibly being successful. Did that concern have something to do with
I speak about it a lot because, you know, the life of a president is very dangerous. It's 5.2%. You know what a race car driver is? 1/10 of 1%. A bull rider, that looks pretty dangerous. It's 1/10 of 1%. No, it's 5.2% is you don't make it. You should have told me. You're an excellent reporter. You should have told me that years ago. Maybe I wouldn't have run. It's a very dangerous profession. No, I'm number one on the kill list for Iran. They're lovely people. I'm number one. So I don't know. I can't tell you that. But I don't really care because I'm doing my job and I'm doing it, I hope, better than anybody's ever done it, because we have a country that's hot and really, really successful. But I mention it only because it's on the list. I mean, it came out. There was another list came out yesterday, and I'm number one on. I like being number one on TikTok better, but I'm number one on the list for.
So he's mentioning that in the EU. So where did he get this? What intelligence agency, ODNI, military, did they present this to President Trump and say, hey, look, before you go over there, we want to show you this. We don't want to let you know. We want to inform you. Well, your trusted allies at NATO through the EU and the cabal and the banksters, the Bank of London, the IMF, what have you, all the controlled apparatus in some way are targeting you, okay? And you're going right into the lion's den in some way, and you're going to see them because that's who these people are. It's not Iran per se, okay? It's the people that control them, okay? It's the people that are really up there. Remember, we mentioned level 1, level 2, level 3. I mean, there's so many layers behind them. Who are all these layers in some way? It's much more deeper than you can possibly fathom, okay? So him bringing that out, him showcasing that and explaining that to everybody and saying, wait a minute, okay? Look, I've seen these lists. These lists are growing. There are much more people that want me dead immediately, and it's going to continue going on. And it's very sad in some way. Yes, Patty B, I hate hearing him say that. Yes, scare event coming. I think so. A lot of people are representing that. But again, is this also harkening back to 2016, 17, where the narratives are reintroducing themselves from the first time around, from the first administration? Yes. And was that in some way for us to see while he took the old Air Force One back to the UK to meet the new Air Force One? Maybe in some ways. Let's say hello, everybody over here on Bill.net. And I'll get to Sean Joe. Thank you for the cookie. Senior Apollo gifted the phone. We just exposed the world's military. Russian can't even overtake Ukraine. You know, that's an interesting thing in some way. Russia can't even overtake Ukraine. You know, we're going to get back to that in some way. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe we're seeing it because of all the drone attacks. Where's all the drones coming from? President Trump also, Senior Polo, today said, we're going to let Ukraine, okay, have the actual opportunity to build their own Patriot defense missiles. I thought that was interesting. But remember, the Europeans buy these weapons from us, and they sell it back to Ukraine in some way, and they're using this against Russia. But we're not involved. Darla gifted the can. We're just the middleman. Gifted the can. Good evening. And while President Trump is trying to solve this, he's saying, well, you know, why don't you just have these defense batteries that he mentioned highly in order to move this forward? But again, we don't know really anything about this war, okay, in Ukraine. We have no idea what's taking place. We know that a lot of people are dead, according to what President Trump says. That's all we know. We don't see any image of it. We don't see anything that's going on. So, again, I digress, and I would just say, be careful with all that. Darla gifted the can. Good evening, Brett. Weather is hot. News is hot. Yes, it is. It is hot. It's super hot. It's Africa hot. Curious Cat gifted the cookie. Afternoon, everyone. What's up, Wood USA, for the 219 gold pills? Good to see you. And Thea, thank you for the 600 gold pills. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody in YouTube. Alito, True Terran, what's up? Metal Mama, long time. Blue DeVilly, man. Hey, Brett. Where's Marshall? Marshall is basically not around these days because he's taking care of his dog who's very sick and ill and not going to make it. So he's got to spend a lot of time doing that. Glory be, looking forward to your show. Let's go. All right, let's continue on. So I got more stuff regarding what is being presented out here about this, about the plane, about everything. Why the double plane? Why, in some way, not take the original plane, or excuse me, the new plane? Okay, there's a lot of supposition about that. So why aren't you flying the new plane home? A lot of people caught wind of this, and they're discussing it, and they wanted these questions in.
Go ahead.
Hey, Sean McCreesh, New York Times. But why aren't you flying the new plane home?
Say what?
Why aren't you flying on the new Air Force One home?
It's flying to Europe, to one of the big bases, 2 or 3 of the big bases, where we can show it to the people, and we'll be going home by normal methods. But we have it going to Europe, to a couple of bases, actually one in particular, but it's going to go to a couple of bases, so the soldiers can see it because it's truly magnificent. Yeah, please.
Do you believe that? I mean, he sends the plane over to the UK, obviously for, unoccupied, at least what we know of, to go there. And so the troops can see this magnificent piece of artwork that's probably not fully, let's just say, tuned up, meaning it's not top heavy with the, self-defense mechanisms that it probably needs. That's possible. That's what's been suggested. It doesn't have the necessary armaments for its own protection. That's quite possible. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know in some way, but a lot of people are suggesting it. But the argument and the discussion are here. Let's play this out. Here it is. Reporter asked President Trump why his plane is to fly back from NATO summit in Turkey aboard the old Air Force One after arriving in a new Qatari donated plane. Listen to this.
Those questions from two of the reporters about the president ditching his new Air Force One and flying out of Ankara another way. Very interesting because, something's hinky, clearly. Do we think that it's the security around the airport, threats from Iran to target the president there in Ankara, possibly the new Air Force One not being totally equipped, so there might be security concerns about him flying off in the new Air Force One? What are your thoughts?
Well, Kira, I think, first off, I think anything with regards to the airplane's enhancements or lack thereof would be pure speculation by anyone. Those are closely guarded, classified programs for Air Force One. So I won't even speculate on that. I think it largely has to do with lack or maybe not top level security and ability to secure Air Force One on the ground in Ankara. Oftentimes we think of standoff, right, just from a human being perspective, prevent, some terrorist from, throwing a grenade or shooting an RPG at Air Force One. But threats today are much more sophisticated, electromagnetic threats, optical threats, infrared threats. There's all sorts of threats, and standoff from those threats is difficult, especially in and around that airport. I've flown in and out of there, and it was probably a concern. So, and it had to be significant enough, I think, in this case, for President Trump to agree to not fly out on.
So what he's saying is that in Ankara, in Turkey, that airport was predominantly a very big concern. So in order to make this right, they wanted to bring both planes over and send the other one out before the other one came in and get that ready and prepared just in case. All right. And that even though the old Air Force One had better, let's just say, equipment to repel boarders in some way in case of attack was necessary, they didn't want to make sure that the bridge one, Air Force One, they had sent away, was unharmed in just any type of matter, like he was saying, an EMP or a drone attack or something. Sounds legit. It sounds legit. It sounds good. It makes sense. But the concern was there. The concern must have been really heavy and highlighted there that they wanted to do something to President Trump and his team while he was in Turkey, and they got ahead of him in this matter. But again, we're not hearing about this. We're just hearing about the concerns about the plane, not necessarily about his life, okay, about the plane, whether the plane was going to take off, had the viability to take off, had the viability to land, had another opportunity where he would be stuck there and he couldn't get out. There was a lot of other stuff that was put in tow that they're not breaking down in some way that this gentleman is suggesting.
On it. As we know, he's very proud of that new plane. And so it must have been something significant.
Okay. What's your thoughts out there? Let me know what your thoughts are in the chat. Did you think this was significant enough for people to highlight this in some way? I mean, a lot of people are suggesting that there's something more nefarious here, something more concerning. Look, I will take that latter approach and say that they were doing it as a precautionary measure because they didn't know what was going to happen. What if the plane in itself had been, let's just say, received an EMP attack, okay, or it was attacked in some way, and you couldn't get that plane off the ground, how would the president and his team be able to leave? Obviously, there would have been an alternative route. So bringing the other plane in and arriving on that just in case, and then moving that out to the UK while President Trump would take off from the Air Force Two, the old Air Force Two, so to speak, old Air Force One, and then meet the new plane in UK in some way, while he's saying that everybody wants to look at this new plane, must be a reason why. And they were concerned about this. Other people have different thoughts about it. We will continue on. Nick Sorter puts this out. Nick Sorter's been all over the place talking about it. President Trump had some commentary on the plane, which we'll get to. He didn't like this commentary at all. President Trump has boarded the former Air Force One in Turkey. He landed in the UK. This is certainly the right call, as the new Air Force One likely doesn't have countermeasures. That's what they're saying. The new Air Force One is simply a bridge aircraft, as the real VC-25B Air Force One has been delayed over and over again, and likely due to development installation of advanced countermeasure systems. Apparently, there are going to be new systems in place for drone attacks. I think that's the thing. We have new serious threats to the president's plane, or the opportunity to attack President Trump's plane in some way. That's why he flies with a large contingent of different types of strike force teams, F-15s, stealths, you name it, all over. And it has to. And so we don't know what are the new operations that are going in place. Here's something else that Sorter put it out. He put this out in some way, and consider this. Now, I'm not saying this is true or not, but there is something to this in some way, that there is a concern. The press pool aboard Air Force One has been advised to keep the window shades closed, according to Megan Messerly. It's not immediately clear why, but the pooler felt the need to mention that in a final report. President Trump came out and said on Air Force One, I quote, any press that was directed to close their window shades due to potential threat from Iran should change professions. So realistically, this whole thing, the people drumming this up, making it more exacerbated, and also, let's just say, rolling with this in some way. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a threat, but he doesn't want to give off that there was or is not while they're on the plane. Here's Michael Savage. He comes out. He's not really a Trump fan anymore. He used to like Trump in the first term. He's actually kind of dipped out these days. He says, Air Force One from Qatar, I warned from the outset the security concerns. Should have had POTUS reject the Trojan horse. Now Trump won't fly home on it from Turkey. Was I right? Now, I don't necessarily believe that. A lot of people are implying in some way. They're suggesting that the plane was compromised. And I don't necessarily believe that it was compromised. I think it's more logical to suggest that it wasn't outfitted with the major, let's just say, particulars that it needed as a weapons defense mechanism against a highly, let's just say, sophisticated attack in the future, whether by drones or what have you. And while we're waiting on an opportunity for Boeing to produce the new planes, okay, with new levels of defense mechanisms in some way, he's got to continue utilizing the old ones while he has a contingency of planes that follow him in his protection. Obviously, laying this out at NATO and telling NATO, yes, I know who you are. I know that you want me dead. I know that you want my team dead. He is pointing out and saying this deliberately, okay, showing everybody that the proxy groups of people are inside NATO that control the cabal, that control or involved with the cabal, involved with the Bank of London, involved with the IMF. They, the banksters, all these people that are involved, all these people that profit off of this stuff, who are the proxy, let's just say, army particulars that are, who've done nothing but what? Stonewall against President Trump. He mentioned Italy, UK, France. He mentioned Spain, where he couldn't land the planes. We couldn't do anything there. All those countries in tow right now are in defiance of the United States. While they put on a good game, they put on a good face and stuff, it's all garbage. It's all for you to see. NATO, okay, and the EU, okay, are not our allies, okay? And we are slowly walking away from them. He's putting them on blast. And once we take Iran out, we don't have to level the country. We don't have to nuke the country. We don't have to carpet bag them, bomb them to no end and look like Gaza. We could still have enough of the people to help them rise up, overthrow, and take back the country in a different manner. But by controlling the economic system, all right, which is the Strait of Hormuz, which is the economic weapon, we can control the oil traders, the military industrial complex. And is this a distraction from our real domestic attention, or is this directly connected to our domestic needs? Or is this a stress test on the fragility, okay, of the proxies, these countries that are in control, working with central bank cartels? It's probably one of the three or all of the above. Either way, it doesn't matter. This was presented to us in such a manner, and simultaneously for the world to see that NATO and Iran are interconnected. Yes, they are on a lot of different levels, and we are out on our own doing what we need to do, and we're showing them, hey, look, we don't get this, we don't make this deal, we don't do that. Well, you know what? Too bad. We're going to cut you off, we're going to bleed you dry, and you're going to beg for us. We're actually going to take the oil, and we're going to sell it ourselves, just like we're doing with Venezuela. We're going to make our own profits. I think we already have control of Carg Island. I think all the necessary, let's just say, actions have already been done. You don't say this over and over again without implementing in some way. So I'm not necessarily sure I buy all that. So one last point about the cover story. So Leon Panetta, okay, I think everybody knows who he is. He was the former CIA director over Obama. He comes out and says this regarding this. He smells a rat when it comes to about the planes. Listen to what he says. This is a cover story. Leon Panetta says Trump is hiding the true reason behind Air Force One switch. Let's listen.
Secretary Peter teed you up.
I've always been concerned about security issues with this kind of plane that's built by another country, regardless of the fact.
So they're automatically asserting that President Trump made the wrong decision in accepting this Trojan horse as they're parlaying this out. And they're using this and saying this type of instrument that was gifted to us was the reason why it should not be utilized as a bridge. So why give so much of a critique about this plane that we used as a bridge and then sent over to the UK as a secondary vessel or primary vessel where we brought the old one back in some way? Why is it? Is it the old one is so decrepit and actually in itself, it might not be up to date as we're told? I mean, you could see a double blind here. We're not really sure what was, let's just say, improved or nestled into the new plane. You don't know. You don't know because it's top secret. But the former Secretary of Defense under Obama, the former CIA director over Obama, makes these assertions in some way. And it seems like he's clearly out there in left field because he's not dialed in. He doesn't have any. I don't know if he has a security clearance in some way, but he's making these arguments in some way that President Trump had made a deal with the devil, and now he's concerned that it's going to blow back. They're going to try and kill him.
That country, we may have good relations with that country. The fact is that from a security point of view, you have got to be concerned that there are going to be efforts to try to gather intelligence. And I'm sure they've reviewed the whole plane, but as somebody involved with security, I would be very concerned about making sure that the president's security is protected. The only way to do that is by having that plane made in the United States and carrying the equipment that is provided by the United States.
See, that's interesting, Sean Joe. The plane was taken apart, put back together, and there's no security threat with the plane itself. No, I agree. Now, whether or not the plane is equipped with the up-to-date fail-safes for defense, posturing, or offensively to help protect the plane in general, we don't know, okay? But what he is saying here, Leon Panetta, and I don't believe him at all, is saying is that, well, this is why we shouldn't accept these types of gifts in some way. You know, I would consider that maybe they're pushing an argument that they think in some way that it's better for President Trump to ride around a plane that's 40 years old, that is not up to date, that all the defense mechanisms in those places are outdated, and the opportunity for that plane to be, let's just say, attacked or destroyed or hit in some way, God forbid, is much more, let's just say, higher up, where the other plane is bigger, it's faster, it's more maneuverable, as we're told. And the idea of having both planes there just in case something was happening, you didn't want to lose that one plane that was sitting on the runway, and you wanted to send that off while the older plane was there. So if, God forbid, something happened to that plane, we would still have the bridge plane, as we're told. Consider that. I'm thinking it might have been bugged. There's another point to that, Darrell. We're not really sure. Again, a lot of this stuff is circumstantial. This is all suspect. It's all conjecture, a lot of supposition. I'm just giving you the layout and the leg of the lamb here.
So that we can assure that the president is not only secure but safe. So I don't think there's any question that there are security concerns here. What they are, we don't know, but I'm sure that's involved.
Have you ever heard of a situation where the president switches planes like this? I mean, I know usually there are two Air Force Ones. You know, one is not called Air Force One. When the president travels, there's always a backup. Usually if there's a problem, it's a mate.
The call sign Air Force One is when the president is on the plane, okay? When he's flying on the plane, it's Air Force One. When he's not flying on the plane, it's not called Air Force One, okay? Consider that and understand that. It's just a call sign.
Maintenance issue, right? Could it just be a maintenance issue?
Well, it's a brand new plane. If there's a maintenance issue with a brand new plane, that raises even more concerns. I don't think this is about maintenance. This is a cover story of some kind to try to deploy one plane to Britain and have the president return to the old plane that was Air Force One. There's more going on. I think the war in Iran may have something to do with it. He is in Turkey. It's right next to Iran. There does have to be some real concerns about the president's security. Even he himself basically admitted the concern about his personal security. So for all of those reasons, I think that a decision was made to try to protect the safety of the president.
Okay. So that's the former Secretary of Defense and former CIA director. He wasn't sounding political. He sounded like he's rolling right down the middle with his arguments. What say you out there? Do you believe what Leon Panetta has said? Do you think in some way that there's something more to this? What's your thoughts out there? I mean, clearly there was something up. If something doesn't make any sense about this, and you know what? That plane landed in the UK, I believe. Also, President Trump's the Air Force One that he flew on. That he was talking with the media, which we'll get to. He has some conversations. It seems like it landed there too. Now, whether he switches planes or not, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out more later on. Something else happened. Yeah, it's possible something else happened, and we're not discussing it. We're not actually, in some way, streamlining it in such a way that we should be discussing it. I don't know. I'm just saying that this is a relevant point that we're made to see, and something is coming back in focus. Yes, the narratives are back in play. It harkens back to 2017, where we see a picture of a missile being shot up in the sky. We also remember what happened in Ohio with a missile that was shot out there in some way, where President Trump's plane was coming back from the east, from Asia and what have you, traveling back. I don't know if it was Japan or China, or what having, traveling back that way. And we're told that there was something in tow this. So I don't know if what we're seeing now is reminiscent of this, but it seems like there are odd things that are going on. Yeah, he's on the new plane heading back. Okay, well, thank you, Brando Bean. Good to see you. A long time. I haven't seen you guys in a long time. Let's continue on. Welcome to be here. All right, let's move on. Let's get into the other narratives of 2016 that seem to be, let's just say, nipping at our heels that are about to, let's just say, unfurl out that we need to discuss. Now, I didn't get to cover this. I was on True Reporting yesterday. I think Thomas broached this a little bit, but I didn't have time to delve into this and discuss it. But I saw it was all over the place. Some people covered it, but I want to do my, let's just say, yeoman's work to cover this. What happens when explosive new form of information about a politically motivated murder in D.C., aka Seth Rich, suddenly comes to light? Well, we're about to find out. Interesting stuff.
The truth about Seth Rich's death is set to come out. Finally, the fact that this additional evidence was miraculously found, secured in a secret room at the FBI HQ is crazy, right? But that it was also in burn bags that oddly never made it to the incinerator only adds to the intrigue. Who would have the...
So that means someone allowed these things to go to a burn bag, put in a closet, as we're told by the current director of the FBI, that he found all the stuff in the office of where he sits in a closet that was hidden. So there would only be one person that could be in charge of all this stuff. We'll just say one, and it's Director Wray. Was he the one that helped, let's just say, position and facilitate and move all the proper evidence to be uncovered later on by a future director in some way? It's possible. Were this all laid out in some way for us to see in a different time period, in a different line? Yeah, absolutely. It would be the only person. That's the only thing I could think of. Listen to the rest of this.
Type of power to pull that off.
Exactly.
The timing is also notable, given it involves many of the same interests embroiled in other grand jury investigations currently underway. I suspect that all the right swamp creatures in D.C. are gripping extra hard at the moment. And between you and me, they should be.
Yeah, exactly. Again, a murder, okay, that's been basically it's been what? Since he was murdered, what's 2017? How many years has passed by that his death has gone, there's no arrest, there's no nothing about it. I'm going to cover a little bit about more. Awaken Outlaw puts this up, and I'll get into the other stuff. He says this, and I think this is a good point because, again, all this stuff seemed to die and disappear. Now it's bubbling up. It's returning. All the 2016, 17 narratives are now kind of just like swimming in the stream, so to speak, and we're all picking this up. Why is that? Why are we finally coming to some conclusion, some type of evidence that is going to be found? As he said, the fact that the additional evidence miraculously found secured in a secret room at the FBI headquarters is crazy, right? But that is also in burn bags that obviously never made it into the incinerator. It's very odd indeed, and I have more to cover than this because there's a couple other people that put out some really good takes. Let me just jump to this. MJ Truth puts this out. He makes a good point. All right. I got a couple of people that have it. We're just going to speed through because I want to belabor the time. Since Seth Rich is back in the news, April 2018, Q alluded that the idea that Seth Rich was a victim of a targeted professional hit by two gangsters, MS-13 assets sanctioned by the CIA, Rafael Allegra and Carmelo Marmoli Calaxo. Q asked who was found dead after the murder. Both found shot in Myrtle Beach. Interesting. The day after Seth Rich's death. No leads, no suspects called. The two individuals were hired guns. MS-13, thanks to Barack Hussein Obama's lax border security policies, instructed Homeland Security Border Patrol, BP, to release captured MS-13 members who had what? Ties to U.S. agencies and major drug cartels. The CIA has been involved in drug trafficking operations dating back to the Korean conflict. They protected the Afghan poppy fields as major funding resource. The CIA under Obama was aiding the drug trafficking operations of the Sinaloa cartel as a cartel balance to the Los Zetas cartel's likely power grab in Mexico. National government partially paying Sinaloa and the Fast and Furious weapons. Julian Assange, Ukraine, CrowdStrike, Obama, Hillary, what have you. Puts it here and stuff. It was found dead. So these guys were found dead. Tim Pashut says, calls on Kash Patel, declassify all the records. Let's go. Nothing can sleep. No one shall sleep about this. So Tim Pashut and many others in Congress want this evidence. They want to understand who hid this, why it was there, what's going on. everybody's got eyes open on this and matter. And maybe this is going to bring forth a whole wave of more information that is basically going to let's put it this way, put people's asses puckered up, because a lot of stuff is about to go down.
Russian
a lot of people
government.
are connected to this stuff. You think about the former mayor of D.C. You think about many other people that were involved. Also about the people that are at the hospital during Seth Rich's departure. I guess he was alive when he got to the hospital, and then somehow he ended up dying there. And a couple of people connected to the DNC, and the mayor. His death seemed to be an overwatch. People were watching to make sure what would happen, or maybe that he just died there in the hospital. Again, all the circumstances surrounding his death, I have a whole list. I want to cover this that was put out in 2017, but this comes from Abby Blue Eyes. This is pretty good. Let's listen to this.
Has engaged in espionage against Americans. They have hacked American websites, American accounts of private people, of institutions. Then they have given that information to WikiLeaks for the purpose of putting it on the internet.
We now know that without a doubt, the DNC had material stolen. John Podesta had material stolen through Russian intelligence efforts, through cyber attacks, which then migrated to WikiLeaks, which is pretty much a wholly owned subsidiary of Putin and the Kremlin, which then were strategically put out to hurt me and hurt Democrats.
WikiLeaks never sits on material. Whistleblowers go to significant efforts to get us material, and often very significant risks. As a 27-year-old works for the DNC, who was shot in the back, murdered just 2 weeks ago for unknown reasons as he was walking down the street in Washington. So
that was just a robbery, I believe, wasn't it?
No, there's no finding. So
what are you suggesting? What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that our sources take risks, and they become concerned to see things occurring like that.
But was he one of your sources then? I mean,
we don't comment on who our sources
but
are.
Why make the suggestion about a young guy being shot in the streets of Washington?
Because we have to understand how high the stakes are in the United States.
So I brought a hat too. A Russian hat.
Wow. That attitude, that all that stuff that we're revisiting 2016 and 17, all that agitprop, all that stuff that was put forth, that was sold to the American public, the impeachments of President Trump, all this stuff is now all coming around front and center. It all has to do with the stolen election of 2020. It all has to do with Bill Pulte dropping the bombs that are about to come out. Let me blow this up. I found this. Not too hard, but if you go on Yandex, okay, this comes from Listverse, Mark Oliver. This was back in, I think it was 2017. On July 10, 2016, at 4:18 p.m., Seth Rich, an employee of Democrat National Committee, was shot 2 times in the back and killed. There's more to this stuff I'm going to show you. No matter what the truth is, the murder of Seth Rich is deeply troubling. Either he was bumped off in a Democrat conspiracy to keep him quiet, or else his real killers are getting away because the Republican plot to pin it on the Democrats. Interesting. Here are 10 things that you don't know about, or maybe you forgot. The robbers didn't take anything. You notice that. Seth Rich fought his attacker. When he was found, his hands and knees and his face were bruised. There had been struggle, but it ended up when his assailant shot him 2 times in the back. They had been in a string of robberies in the area, with 6 reports coming in the last few weeks. None of these had ended in a homicide. But the police believe that Rich was just the next victim of a string of holdups. That's what it was purported originally. The robbers, though, didn't take anything. So if it was a robbery that failed, why didn't they take his watch, his wallet, any of his jewelry, his phone? They didn't. He still has his credit cards, still has his phone. Seth's watch band was damaged, but it was not stolen, and neither was anything else, including an expensive pendant he had draped around his neck. Thus, number 9, Julian Assange heavily implied he was the leak. Yes, we know about that. He made an unexplained stop along the way home. This is something I think goes unreported. Nearly 3 hours before he died, Seth Rich was at Lou's City Bar. The bar was closing, and the manager, Joseph Capone, offered him a ride home. No, Seth told Capone, I'm going somewhere else, and then I'll go home. Where did he go? Nobody knows where Seth went, but he was only a 40-minute walk away from home and did not die until 2 hours and 49 minutes later. There was an explanation. Seth spent a lot of time on his phone at 2:05 a.m., called his girlfriend in Michigan. The two reportedly had been having trouble, and Seth was depressed over it. After a night at the bar, he dialed up a long distance and used his liquid confidence to talk their problems out. They spent more than 2 hours talking. Seth's girlfriend has said that he did not seem alarmed or like he was in any danger during that call. They ended their call. Just 2 minutes later, he was shot to death. Interesting. Were they tracking his phone call? Did they ping him? Brett, are you telling me Seth Rich didn't kill himself? He didn't shoot himself in the back? Well, yeah. Well, just continue on. I mean, there are other things here that I guess a lot of people know. He talked to emergency responders. Did you know that? If Seth was killed by someone he knew, he certainly didn't tell anybody. When the emergency responders found him, he was still alive. Yes, he went to the hospital. He was conscious, breathing, and according to officers, found him quite talkative. Well, Seth was rushed to the hospital. I don't think anybody talks about this. He chatted on something that he had a reputation for. He was known to be a joker and a talker. And when Seth's brother heard that he had babbled about after getting shot, he joked, yep, that was 100% my brother. The police refused to reveal exactly what Seth told them, saying that he could compromise the investigation, but did not accept the theory that he was killed because of his job at the DNC. They're still pursuing the theory it was a robbery gone wrong. An anonymous tip claimed he was the leak. How about this one? In May of 2017, an anonymous tip came into Fox News that someone who claimed to be a federal investigator, Seth Rich, was a leak, and the source claimed he had proof. He told them, I've seen and read the emails between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks. Seth sent 44,053 emails and 17,601 attachments to Gavin McFadden. According to the source, McFadden was a strong supporter of WikiLeaks and tightly connected to Assange. He did die of lung cancer in October 2016. Tragically, he did not live long enough for anyone to ask him if this was true. Wow. Shortly after the tip came in, the FBI denied everything. They had no involvement in the Seth Rich investigation. They claimed, and nobody in the FBI had ever seen Seth's computer. Again, are we going to see Seth Rich's computer? Is Pulte going to unload this? Is this information going to drop in the D-class? It better. Police investigation. Ron Wheeler claims that the police investigation was shut down. By who? Who do you say, Ron Wheeler? Hired to look into Seth Rich's murder, private investigator. Anonymous source saying my investigation up to this point shows there was some degree of an email exchange between Rich and WikiLeaks. Wheeler claims that his source within the police department who said they were told to stand down in this case. The order, he believes, came from the DNC, who were worried they would learn too much. Wow. Ron Wheeler was hired by Fox News as a correspondent. Remember that? Wheeler claimed that he was hired by the Rich family, but it was not exactly true. He worked with the Rich family, but he was hired by someone else, Ed Bukowski. He was a financial advisor who works with Fox News and Breitbart, two Republican supporting sources that have pushed the idea that Seth Rich's death was part of the DNC conspiracy. He did not help the Rich family get in touch with Rod Wheeler. He introduced them and offered them to pay Wheeler's fees. Third, the Rich family denies he was the leak. Number two, the story can be a distraction from Trump's problems. No matter how Seth Rich died, there is a conspiracy at play, and he did not die in a Democrat plot meant to bump off him for opening his mouth. Then this death was used by Republicans to deflect the tension away from Trump against Hillary Clinton. One theory is that the whole story started as a way to get Trump elected and that it was coming back up now to keep him in power. Remember, this is 2017. John Podesta said they make an example out of the leakers. I think everybody's aware of this, regardless of whether Wheeler and Budakowski can be trusted, though. The conspiracy actually started with Julian Assange, the one person who knows for sure who was behind the leaks. Shortly after Assange suggested that Seth Rich was a source, WikiLeaks made a tweet reminding the world something John Podesta said in an email they released in public. I'm definitely making an example of a suspected leaker. So there are some things that maybe you did know, maybe you didn't know. But why is it coming up now? Why is it coming up now? Ask yourself, why are we revisiting old narratives from 2016 and 2017? Let's move on. Here's President Trump today, ladies and gentlemen. All right. He's in Turkey speaking. He's talking about a lot of different things. Let's listen to what he has to say. Does this mean talks with Iran will not resume? I don't care. They can talk, but I think they're wasting their time. They're a bunch of lying guys. They're cheats. They're sick of people. They're sick people.
Does this mean that talks with Iran will not resume?
I don't care. They can talk, but I think they're wasting their time. They're a bunch of lying guys. I do it my whole life. That's all I do is deals. My whole life that's how I became president. I guess that's a deal too. Right?
That's how he became president. We'll
made
talk
a lot
about
of
that.
money. I had a lot of great success, tremendous success. Everything I did, I was successful. And I deal with these guys, and they say this is from a different school. They're liars. They're cheats. They're sick people. They've hurt their people. They killed 54,000 people as of now that were protesting. You know, when people say, how come they haven't taken over? They can't take over because they're dead. They killed them. Nobody's going to take over. They have no guns, and the other side has machine guns. And they're killing them. The press doesn't report it. But they're bad people. They're bad people. And frankly, I don't want to waste my time with them. Now, I'll let our wonderful negotiators keep talking if they want, but I don't see it. I don't like these people. You know that? I like him. I like the leaders. I think all of these leaders.
And they love.
I think they didn't treat the United States fairly for many years.
Interesting that he said that. I like all the leaders. I like you, Root, the head of NATO and stuff. I just don't like Iran. And who is he referencing? Is it the EU? Is it the money backers? It's the cabal, the banksters, all the people that are in charge, the proxy army behind, the level that's behind them, that's in control. He's like, I like all you guys. Okay, you didn't come to our aid. We know that you were told to stand down. We understand that. President Trump has a lot of commentary about it. I recall Podesta implicated, Donna Brazil. She was at the hospital when Seth Rich arrived with Mayor Bowser, ladies and gentlemen. And then subsequently later, he died of his injuries. That's what we're told. We don't know how long he lived. We don't know anything about that. The autopsy reports, a lot of this stuff just magnificently just disappeared into the night. It went into the ether, and this is all coming back now. Yeah, I mean, President Trump speaking about that, he's hot on the trail of taking out Iran. I think this time around, we're basically going to seize the oil. There's a lot more stuff that's involved. It's more layers and layers and stuff. This is about also testing, I think, flexing on the infrastructure, understanding about the oil trading, the speculation, the hedging and stuff. He wants to notice how much of the pressure he's putting on them by hitting them now that the oil will spike. Remember, he was very surprised that the oil didn't hit $200-$300 a barrel in some way, but it did shoot up rather quickly, and it stayed there for a period of time. Now oil is now, 78, 79. It's not going up too much. Is he just monitoring how much of the military-industrial complex, the oil traders, the speculators, and many other, let's just say, particular groups that are involved of hedging their bets and controlling this and managing this in some way to injure and cripple President Trump's administration? We know that we have a midterm election up. We understand that any of these types of, let's just say, retaliations or strikes in some way subsequently raises this. Is he monitoring this in some way? Is he about to break this in some way? Yeah, I think he's going to end this once and for all. He's basically saying, you know what? You don't need your oil. You don't need to have it anymore. We're going to take it. We're going to sell it. We're going to control the market. OPEC is dead. We're going to be the new fucking what? Pirates, okay, on the seas. We're going to be robbing and stealing. We're going to take it all from you. You know why? You can't be trusted. We gave you an opportunity. You can't even what? You can't even give your word. Look, if you can't give your word, you cannot be trusted. What's the point? What's the point? And it's not like we have a definitive argument to protect the Iranian people, even though President Trump does not like to kill. He doesn't like war. He's not into doing this. But I think at this point, he realizes that the situation at hand, whether this was a pause for later on for us to retool back, it's possible. And I think that us giving them the opportunity to say, hey, look, we're just going to take the island. People are like, yeah, done. We don't care. A lot of people will be in favor. Let's get this over. Let's move on, and let's take this out. Daddy Crab, what's up? Welcome back. Thank you for the cookie. Long time no see. Haven't seen you here in a while. Darlow gifted the can. President Trump needs to have a face-to-face meeting with Julian Assange. He knows the bodies are buried. I'm sure he already has. Maybe these conversations already been presented to him through D-Class. We don't know what the D-Class from Pulte is going to, let's just say, lay out. Okay, we don't know if Julian Assange is going to be called up. Is he going to get a pardon? Is he going to be called up as a material witness in this matter? All right, by the Justice Department. You don't know where this is going to go. Sean Joe gifted the cookie. Thank you so much. Let me continue on. There's so much more, and I'm just running out of time here. I apologize, but there's just too much stuff. It really is. But President Trump, and we're just going to skip through it. He's got a lot of commentary today. I just want to go through a couple of important points that he's highlighting out. The rapid response 47. We're not attacking the highest level. The highest level are the bridges. Interesting that he made that, let's just say, analogy. He wanted people to understand it's not level 1, level 2 and stuff. That all we did is hit these certain areas that, let's put it this way, we're set up. All right. We're scripted out. Let's put it that way. We hit the big targets already. The rest is all just scripted out, empty buildings or what have you. Now he's saying we're not attacking the highest level. The highest level are the bridges, the electric plants, where they make the electricity. If we have to, we'll take them out. I don't want to. So maybe the opportunity is that we hit areas all over the place that weren't necessary primary targets. They were secondary, tertiary, or let's just say they weren't anything that was held there of, let's just say, a mass quantity that resulted in something that that was vital to the country. And I think that in some way you have to consider that the possibility that we're just hitting places left and right as a show of force and saying, look, we could take this to the next level by doing these things. If you continue on, we'll hit it. And I think maybe we are. We attacked Carg Island last night. We knocked out a piece. I said, don't touch the oil. That's why I call him the pipe hitter. Don't touch the oil. Don't hit the pipes because maybe we'll take over Carg Island. I already think we did. And I said to you two about 2 months ago. All right, there's not a thing they could do about it. Normally, I'm not that way, but they really deserve it. Yeah, I think President Trump is basically saying, look, we've given you an opportunity. We scripted out our response to make it look like this whole situation that is taking place was a lot more serious in tow. We hit the primal targets, and everything else is just theatrical, orchestration of like hitting here, and it's not vital. The people are not losing their lives. It's not whatever. But I think in some way, President Trump is now drawing a distinction about what we were doing before, and now saying, you know what? Now the vital targets, because we've given you an opportunity and you failed. And so thus, that is where I think things are in tow. And that's what President Trump is saying. Now, you're not going to have any power, okay? You're not going to have any bridges to cross. You might not have certain opportunities where the grain, the soybeans, all these different things that you were going to get from us that we were going to sell to you are all dissipated, all right? It all evaporated. It went through the ether. It's all gone now. Now you will come on your hands and knees, if you're still alive, begging for us. You will beg for us. You will have to beg for us. And if you don't, your people will starve. Okay. Or they basically take arms and they say, you know what? Fuck this. And I've also said there are probably multiple competing factions inside different levels that are there. You have the RRGC that are still involved, still in control. And we don't even know who is really in control, who is really funding it and pulling the strings in this. Most of these people, have they dipped out? We don't know. You notice how many people live in London that are oil, let's just say, tycoons from Iran that are living in LA, all these people. So do they actually live here? Or is it just their proxy army that's in control that is just sending them money back for all the places they're located from while they operate in this manner? Don't know. Don't care. But at this point, get it over with. We don't care. Seize the island. I don't really care how many people you kill anymore. Okay? All right? In the IRGC, in the military, or in their government. I'm not like, I don't carpet bag to bomb the people. That's not what he's going to do. But at this point, what is it going to take? You're going to have to cut them off, the lifeblood that feeds them. Okay? that they make money to sell product, to get stuff, to clothe, to feed, to house them, to keep the electrical grid running. I don't even know if that's even possible anymore. President Trump confirms Iran screwed up and the latest rounds of leaders could be killed.
5%. They have, they want to make a deal, but they don't know how to make a deal. And then they go around shooting ships at night. I don't like that. They're dealing with very fine people. They're dealing with Steve Witkoff. They're dealing with Jared Kushner and J.D. Vance. And they're dealing with Marco and Scott. They're dealing with great people, but I don't know. I think they're a little loco. They're a little crazy. But they told us they'd like to go to the funeral of a very a person who was killed a lot of people.
See, he doesn't mention the name. He doesn't even say the Ayatollah. Some people say, well, that was a brain freeze and he had a gaffe in some way. I disagree with that. He's not telling who died. He's not explaining who this person was in retrospect in regards to that. We don't even know who this person was that was killed, that was a Ayatollah. I mean, we hear they got a shit ton of these people. They're like clones. You press a button, another one pops up with a fucking turban. We don't know anything. We're flying blind here. We only know is that they're shooting at ships, and we basically now are bitch slapping them back and saying, you know what? That's it. That's it. No more. We're not going to play games anymore. It's like what? Swatting mosquitoes. You get tired of it until you put up what? A net or a mosquito what? Zapper, and you zap the shit out of them.
Khomeini killed a lot of people.
No.
Over the years, and there for a long time. Don't forget what we did should have been done 47 years ago. It could have been done any time within 40. This has gone on for, they were the bully of the Middle East. So they're a much different country. Now, in one day, all of their anti-aircraft things are gone. That doesn't mean they're not going to get a plane at some point. But all of it's gone. Everything's gone. Their leaders are gone. They had leaders, they're gone. And they had another set of leaders, they're gone. Now they have another set of leaders, they may be gone. Who knows?
I mean, we don't know how deep the bunkers are. All these people hiding, and next thing you know, they move them into position. From Space Force and all these different opportunities, we can find these people. We can see these people. So we know what they're doing all the time. We have an understanding, but that is not the point here. I think the point is that you need to understand is that President Trump is saying, look, our patience is now worn thin. We no longer, all right, yes, he started it, arrest him immediately. How much control does Obama have with Iran? That's a good point. How many people, have control in Iran? All right. He gave them a lot of stuff. We know Brennan, how much his, let's just say, loyalties lie with Saudi Arabia. We don't know who is really running this. If it's a CIA top-down operation, is it Bank of London, many other different groups and stuff. It doesn't matter at this point. Do you really care who is actually running? Okay. I don't care. Take off the Scooby-Doo mask. It doesn't matter. The point being is simply in 4.5 months, we have an election. If this is an operation to smoke out who is basically involved, the oil traders, the speculators, the hedge funders, the military industrial complex, are they the ones that President Trump is watching in this manner? And that is the point. That is the relevance. In order to what? Take away their main operation, the lifeblood, the fuel, the black oil in some way that gives them their opportunity to sell, make money, and then do whatever they have to do with all that extra funds and stuff. That is the point. He's basically trying to say, look, if we undercut this now, if we seize this, watch everything drop. Everything will change immediately. And that's what he's doing. So in some way, it's kind of like a sting. He's monitoring and seeing in some way how much more they all are involved. If we hit them, are they jumping up and raising the prices? Are they increasing this more? How much more is the military industrial complex getting off all the missiles and all the expenditures on this in some way? Are they working and double dealing? There are so many different intricacies that are involved here that regards Carg Island, regards Iran, that regards everything that is being watched. But the Hormuz is the economic weapon. We have to take control of it. We have to seize the island. And once it's done, it will no longer be a problem for us or anybody else. And what difference does it make anymore? Do you really care? All right, we got problems at home. And I don't want this to be a distraction because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. And you know what? Some people say, was this a big mistake? No, I don't think this was a big mistake. I think when we're going to find out in the end, President Trump was right. Because whether you deal with it now or you deal with it later, or you leave it for the next future president to take, which he didn't want to do. He wanted to make sure he took all the slings and arrows. So if J.D. Vance or whoever else is going to be president in the near future, he didn't want that on his presidency. He wanted this to be done. He knows his time's up in the sense of his presidency, so he doesn't really care. It's about salvaging what? The remaining bastion of our independence and our sovereignty, and making sure it's secure, and making sure financially and economically that we become and regain and control as what? The new what? Pirates on the seas of selling oil away from the Middle East as we walk away from them. And no more will anybody else have to be what? Involved with. President Trump comes out and says, everything I do is a deal. That's how I became president. That was a deal too. Listen to this.
These talks won't resume after we get through the funeral proceedings.
What?
Does this mean that talks with Iran will not resume?
I don't care. They can talk, but I think they're wasting their time. They're a bunch of lying guys.
Now listen to this.
My whole life, that's all I do is deals. My whole life that's how I became president, I guess. That's a deal too, right? But I made a lot of money.
No.
But I made a lot of money. I had a lot of great success.
Out. Everything I do is how I became president. That was a deal too.
And I deal with these.
Interesting. Who did he make that deal with to become president? Who recruited him? Who brought him in some way to become president? He was running a lot longer than 2015, ladies and gentlemen. Question is, who recruited him? Who got him in there? Glory be. If Iran doesn't care about the people, they're crazy. They have always been. Yeah, exactly. Iran is run by not just apocalyptic, satanic, sick fucking bastards in some way. They don't care about their people. They want to control that state. Okay, they're no different from what you looked at Venezuela under Maduro or Cuba, a narco state. It's just that their religion, in some way, their supposed religion, okay, controls them in this matter, and so they subjugate their people in that manner. But it's really not about that. It's all what? It's hyperbolic. It's not as real as you think it is. It's all under cover of a mask. All right. That distinction is not so dissimilar, that they use that as an artifice, all right, to control their people, when really these people are controlled by different captors, okay? And one day we'll find out when the Scooby-Doo mask comes off. All right, let's move on. Let's see what else I got. Let's see, rapid response. I got a couple other things here. Okay, let's get into Greenland. So President Trump, again, the deal has been made. Greenland, one of my favorite subjects to get into. Cuba's another amazing subject. These are things that we're going to control. When I see us expanding our, not empire, but let's just say our vastness, okay, as territories increase that are inside our opportunity to advance in some way, not just for our vital protection, but to secure the hemisphere in some way in a variant ways. Okay, it's not just that. It's listening to how President Trump particularly argues this discussion over and over again, and how many people overlook what he's saying and what he's suggesting. He's saying he's just looking at his entire, he's just taking Cuba, he's just taking all this stuff. Listen to how he approaches this and how NATO has responded after a period of time. Thank you, Boneless Chicken, for the cookie, Sean Joe for the cookie, and Thea for 600 gold pills. Like, share, and subscribe. Drop us a gold pill. Comments, questions, concerns, support the platform. You can do so on Rumble as well. You can buy me at coffee.com/wearerise, and I'll put the Cash App up here. I forgot I put it up there. Okay, let's continue on. So President Trump says Greenland is very important for the United States, but it's not important for Denmark. In fact, Denmark was overrun by Nazis. Listen to what he says here, and let's get back to that discussion.
I mean, just so they understand, Greenland is very important for the United States, but it's not important for Denmark. In fact, when Denmark was overrun by the Nazis in less than one day, Hitler beat them out in one day, took over. They asked us to take care of Greenland. In fact, we took Greenland, and then stupidly we gave it back. We shouldn't have given it back to them because we're the ones that need it. We need it for protection of the world, not just the United States. And It's very important. It doesn't help Denmark, but it helps us.
No.
And it's very important for us. And again, they were defeated very quickly. Denmark was beaten in 1 day, less than 1 day, by the Nazis, by Hitler. And when this happened, they immediately switched it over to us. We owned it. We had it. We were taking care of it, and then we gave it back, which is, I don't know why. I wouldn't have given the Panama Canal back either. So what do I know? I certainly wouldn't have done that because China's trying to take over the Panama Canal, and that's not going to happen. So, but I just, it's interesting. I'm very unhappy with NATO, and yet this man is a great leader, and he gets it. He gets it maybe better than some of the leaders.
Right. So he gets it better, and there's a deal in place that the United States will secure it. So whatever is being discussed, whatever is being happened is being drummed out in NATO. The Secretary General knows this, is aware of it. Denmark can sit there and bitch and moan all they want, but I think it's basically beyond them now. I think they really are losing every opportunity now. You have Finland and you have Iceland saying, we'll defend this no matter what. It's not going to happen. It's all what? It's all rhetoric. It's all blah, blah, blah. It means nothing. Okay. They don't have an army. They don't have people we're not going to go to war with them. All we have to do is say, you know what? We're not going to fund NATO anymore. And you're not going to get a piece of that sponging. You're going to get a piece of that parasitic financial, let's just say, exploitation and leeching that we do to keep you guys afloat. That's the bottom line. All right. We pay to subsidize NATO. So you know what? NATO, give us this, give us that, give us that. Or you know what? We take it by force. Either way, it's going to be ours because we've already paid enough into the till. That's the point. We've given enough into their coffers. And President Trump is aware of this. They all know this. They're also setting up operations, England and UK, France, and other countries to break away from NATO. And I think he's going to force NATO to separate. They're going to bifurcate on themselves. I think so. A lot of them are just going to be like, I'm done with all this stuff, especially if they can't keep up with their 2% or 3% or whatever they're supposed to pay into. It really doesn't matter. Observing Consciousness on X. If you don't read this guy's stuff, you're missing a lot. Trump walked into NATO with an American First Control team behind him, then immediately showed respect to Turkey while putting Israel on notice. Yes, Israel wants to attack Egypt. Israel wants to attack Turkey. They've said this many times. Their hegemony doesn't stop. Turkey is being treated as a major power. Bibi's being checked in public. NATO is being showed who controls them. Trump is not managing allies. He's rebalancing the chessboard. So Nick sort of puts this out. I don't get into it too much. I'm not going to control this too much. He says, you can see he comes out there in some way. But I think that point, what he's saying in some way is that, look, Turkey's a NATO ally. So you have to give them respect and quarter in some way in this battle. And you don't want, if we leave, all right, an opportunity where Israel or someone else gets out of line. All right, they're enough powerhouse. They're right next to Iran to control anything that gets out of way. That's why we're going to give them the F-35s. Not, and look, how outdated are they? They're like what, 5 years old, 6 years old, and we're not going to give them the full equipment. They can't buy stuff from Russia. They can't sell that stuff to Russia. All these different things, and people are worried in some way. They don't like the fact that this is a diss to Israel. Who gives a fuck? All right, you have to show them in some way that, look, you're going to be treated as an equal. As long as you don't do anything out of line. Here's all these provisions that are in place. You have to follow these guidelines. If you follow these guidelines, then you will get what you have, what you asked for in some way. And you have to consider that, look, the second largest army, as we're told, is somewhat, I think, should be disconcerting to anybody in the Middle East that wants to get out of line. I mean, I don't know why Israel thinks that they'd want to start a war with Turkey in some way. That would be a massive mistake. They barely got past their own Iron Dome with being droned to death by how many rockets that hit them. So I think they should be careful. Look, if it's rebalancing the Middle East in some way with them, so be it. As long as we're out of this in some way that we don't have to be checkmarked into it, what difference does it make? And you know what? Let the NATO allies handle this more. They're all going to separate and splinter on their own as time goes on. So what difference does it make? You want to make sure the alliance in the Middle East is set with the major countries in place to get everybody on board, and then that there's a balancing power there that can make sure that nothing steps out of line. England is trash. They're behind most of the BS. Bugger, Diana too. Yeah, Okay. All right, move on. Let's move on. I'm running out of time. So, all right, let me put this up. Here we go. This was a good comment. X22 puts this up, and I think this is another good point about NATO, and we'll move off of NATO real quickly. It's Trump lifted the sanctions on Turkey at the NATO summit, then told them why. Italy turned us down. Germany, France, and Turkey was there for us. That's the point. He's showing them the respect. Iran was a test for NATO allies. They failed. Trump needed to show the world who the real allies were and who were the installed criminals there. Yeah, the same people of the proxy army that are supporting Iran. So, I mean, when President Trump says that, look, there's a reason Turkey stayed out of the war. Yeah, there is a reason why. Because President Trump told them to. Or you know what? They don't have anything invested in it. They weren't getting anything on the back end. They just didn't want it to spread. Consider that. And that's why all these other countries has decided to what? Dip out. All right, a couple other things here. Let me show you. President Trump has told Scott Bessent, it's a good one, basically tells them Spain is done. Don't go to Spain, ladies and gentlemen. Captured state, socialist communism, it's on its way out the door. It's overrun by migrants. They can't stop. The culture is descending into chaos. It's really bad. Trump orders Bessent to cut off all trade with Spain at NATO summit. President Trump has made the point about NATO freeloaders. Yep, and that's what it is. It's a parasitical class. All right, that's the relationship. It's never been in some way equivalent. They've never had some shared opportunity to work with this in any level. It's always been that way. So standing at NATO summit in Ankara, he called Spain wasted because a terrible partner, and then turned to Treasury Bessent and told him to cut off trade with Spain right away. Spain is a wasted cause. We don't want to do any trade business with Spain anymore. Spain is a terrible partner, and they don't participate. They don't pay. I don't want anything to do with Spain. They don't contribute. This is a country that basically is now going way down the wrong path. They've decided to thumb their nose, especially not just in the United States, but at the EU. They basically don't want to pony up the funds for their country to be a part of this club that they have to pay their dues. They don't pay their dues. And what do? Again, subsidize them, cut them off, and let it go. You know what? They'll be coming back around the table very soon begging. And you know what? They'll pay a huge and hefty price. There they will. They'll probably pay us instead of NATO. Trump will probably demand and say, why don't you give us the money? How about you pay us? And you know what? You could do it through tariffs. All right? You want to come back into the fold? Okay, we're going to charge you 100% tariffs. Okay, that's great. You're going to pay that for a while, and then it'll slowly descend. And then you know what? When you're back to where you need to be, then we'll call it even, or we'll work out something that's viable in the future. That's how it's going to go. That's where they're going to go. I think President Trump is going to force them into this. All right, moving on. I got a couple of more things to say. Let's cover New York a little bit. I think another story that I guess continues to go, let's just say, look, put it this way. This story about the Pfizer building being bent like cigarettes. Listen to this. And this really, I think, in some way encapsulates what is happening in socialist New York. And this is a harbinger President talked about. The fear of communism, the fear of that you don't want to pay, you don't have the right resources, you don't want to pony up the money. Where's all the funds going? A New York City construction worker explains the reason for the failure of I-beams in a high-rise apartment. Listen to this.
So this is great. We're steam fitters, local 638. We're doing the fire protection in this building. And what happened here was this building was renovated, and they were going to add another 16 stories to it. But at that point, you need to add more steel. And they obviously didn't add the right amount of steel. So the north side of that building is crumbling. The I-beams are bending like cigarettes in there, which is super dangerous. So I'm assuming they're going to evacuate everyone on the north side of 33rd Street. So, you know, we're a union, some steam fitters. The union iron workers went after this job. They lost it pretty much off profit is what they're looking to do. The contractor that's over here. So we're New York City. We build it right. We build it the first time. And they chose profit over safety and put my members and every construction worker over here in jeopardy.
So can you walk us through what's it going to take to get this back up to code, get this back safe?
You're going to have engineers in here like you wouldn't believe, making sure that everything is supported. And I don't know what's going to happen with the other side of the building now. Time will tell. How much did it sink? How much more is it going to sink? That's the question.
So you had members up there at the
All my
time?
members right here.
They were up there. What did they see? What did they?
Cracking windows, bent beams, floor, concrete was falling from the roof below, and they brought it up, and then they had to evacuate the job immediately. So, and here we are now. And that's the situation now. What we want is responsible construction in New York City. That's all we want. We don't need you to put profits over, crunch wages down, and pay people less just so you can make a couple more bucks while renting your apartments out. That's what we want. So, and then look what happens. We hear reports of the building potentially leaning over. It's the walls that are currently being built in here. You have studs and you have sheetrock. They're bent in half right now. That's how much it's dropped on that side of the building. I have photos. I can send them to you guys. You can put them on whatever you want to do.
So the crew has known about this for a little while. You
No,
think?
this just started happening today, and it happened fast. You know what I mean? Because they just keep adding. And as you add, you put more weight. When you put more weight, that's what's going to happen when it's not engineered correctly or installed incorrectly.
Timeline-wise, can you walk us through how long you see this?
I don't see anyone coming back in this job for a month.
I don't see anybody coming back to this job for a month. They didn't want to pay them. Okay. They went cheap. They went for all profit. They didn't want to pay the people. And so they hired a bunch of fucking and they did the job haphazard. And now most likely they're going to have to take off the top layer and deconstruct it. That's the only way you could save this. All right. I mean, they're not going to demo the whole building, but that's a good point, Darlell. Did the Chinese steel come into play? I don't know. We don't know when this building was, but what he said was the top part that they kept adding and adding and adding. That's the other thing. So they did it at cheap, okay, for profit driven to make more money on the back end. So they saved enough money in doing this, and the proper engineers, the proper people that weren't hired, okay, that were part of what the city hires out to do this. They hired what? H-1B people. They hired third worlders. They hired all these people outside of the normal chain that they hire to build these high-rise cities, these structural engineers that come in that do the whole city. And they avoided that completely because they didn't want to pay all the dues and fees because these people are a part of a larger contingent, a larger organization, and they didn't want to do that. And so that's what happens when you cut corners. And so, like you said, we don't know how long this is going to take. It's going to be a lot longer than you think it's going to be. And I think the top part of that Pfizer building is going to be taken down. It has to. It's the only way. You're going to have to level that part, okay, the top part that they were building on, where it's at, where it's crumbling. You can't just size it up and fix it. You're going to have to cut it, okay, in some way. What's that going to tell? That's going to cost the city more money. Who's going to pay for this in some way? You are in New York. You're going to pay for it. You know what? And that's exactly what socialism does. Aloha, Mom. Gifted the shades for Miss Darla and Wood USA. Well, thank you, Aloha, Mom. Yep, that's what I mean. Look, I don't know if it's Chinese steel, but it's a good point because I read that this whole discussion about this material is going to be hard to get. The question is, why is it going to be hard to get? Why can't we get U.S. steel to replicate this? Is it because they're looking for another vendor to pay this out? Where is this coming from? So that's a good point. We don't know. I don't know. I mean, I like to hear what President Trump's discussion is. The guy is, is all in construction. He builds stuff. So I'd like to hear his take on this. But this Pfizer building and how this is going. Now, the question is, will they level this building? Because it'll be more, let's just say, cost effective to just demo it than cut the top part of it. I mean, that's a thing right now that we're not hearing. And how interesting is that Pfizer building should go away? I mean, the whole discussion of the Pfizer building, who should pay? Maybe Pfizer should pay for that. Huh? They got enough money, right? Don't you think? They killed enough people with their money. I mean, look, I don't know where this is going, but maybe this whole situation has a happy ending that they just remove the building once and for all. And I think that might be a safe bet because you don't want Pfizer killing more people. I digress. Okay, moving on. That's a funny thing. All right, here we are. Couple more things. All right, let's get into a little bit of McConnell. All right. So this I saw the other day. Everybody knows about Mitch McConnell yesterday and stuff. We're going to get to Governor Beshear asking for the McConnell team to show proof of life. They want a response. Apparently, the wife came back. Elaine Chao came back, supposedly. That's what we're hearing. We don't know that for sure. Supposedly she came back. So listen to this. If a senator from Kentucky dies in office, what happens next? We were talking about a little bit about this on True Reporting yesterday.
Senator Mitch McConnell's health. We're not here to report rumors. We're here to ask a different question. What happens if a United States senator
and this is what it's
Kentucky
about.
dies in office? So we decided to read the law. Here's what we found. A few years ago, Kentucky law allowed the governor to appoint a temporary replacement. That law is gone. Today, the governor can no longer appoint a U.S. senator.
Interesting how the 17th Amendment, okay, if we replace the 17th Amendment, that would look like what Kentucky law is in some way. Where the state legislatures were originally designed by the Constitution in some way to appoint their senator representation, not the governor or not somebody else. So if we remove the 17th Amendment, or we get a glimpse of what the 17th Amendment looks like, here it is, and here's what they're talking about.
Instead, Kentucky law requires the governor to issue a proclamation calling a special election. So far, simple. But then we kept reading. The law tells us how much notice must be given before that election. It tells us when candidates must file. It tells us how the winner takes office. But something surprising is missing. We haven't found where the current law says when the governor must issue that proclamation. Immediately, within a certain number of days, before the next general election. We haven't found it yet. And that's the question, because timing determines when Kentucky regains its second senator. And in a closely divided Senate, timing can matter. My friends, we are all anonymous.
That's an interesting take, and I think that's the point. No one's asking. After a certain period of time, this what kicks in. So Amuse puts this out, and this is a really good thing. He's basically saying right now, hey, look, even Kentucky's governor, who is really, let's put it this way, has no viable control of this. He's saying that the governor is now demanding a transparent update on Senator Mitch McConnell's health. His office still won't say what hospitalized him in June 14th and when he'll be back, if he can call reporters. Yep. So you see the governor is demanding some type of thing. They want to get involved. So they're hiding this completely in some way. So here we are. This comes from Mediaite, and here it is. Beshear basically lays it out. We want to know. Now, he can't do anything. It's the legislature, which is controlled by Republicans. We don't know how many rhinos are in there. But Andy Beshear is demanding Mitch McConnell's health. Democrat Senate letter to McConnell's office Wednesday requesting more information about the long-serving senator's current health. The letter comes amid swirling media speculation over the last several weeks, as Governor and I request to fully update Kentuckians regarding the current status of your health. As public office holders, we've made a commitment to our constituents to do our best to represent them, as we always do, to be transparent. I believe this requires a clear communication of one's ability to serve. No. This whole thing is what? They want to get a glimpse of what's going on because of what I just showed you in some way. They want to get ready. They want to make sure that if something, happens in some way after the deadline, this will come into play. So it's not really Beshear is really wanting to find out per se. It's all political. This is all political in some way. Where is it? I had something from President Trump. Oh, it did. What is it? No, I guess it's gone. I had something from President Trump where he was. Oh, there it is. This is it. This is what I wanted to play. So Nick Sorter puts this out again. More good stuff. He's on the plane, I guess, heading to the UK, and he was in an audio discussion with. This is recorded audio, and he's on the plane heading to the UK to go greet the other plane. He was asked about Mitch McConnell. President Trump has no idea about Mitch McConnell. This seems like a real problem. We need proof of life right now. How's he doing? Let's listen to this.
No, I have no idea. I have no idea how he's doing.
What do you think? What's your thoughts out there? Do you believe President Trump knows what's going on with Mitch McConnell? Yes or no? I mean, he knows it and he's denying it, or he's just saying, I really don't know. Do you believe that? Do you believe that this president has any idea what's happening with Mitch McConnell? I mean, it's something to consider, because I was surprised this is the first time that the media has asked him about this. You thought yesterday they would ask him about this, but apparently they're not. So let's go through one more thing. All right. That's all right. All right, let's cover up. We'll just wrap up with some Charlie Kirk stuff, Tyler Robertson, and the case. So apparently, everybody knows that the preliminary is going on and what's happening. A lot of people don't know what this is. They don't understand what's taking place, what you're understanding. I'll just give you, again, explain this to you, that the prosecutors in this case charged Tyler Robinson via a document called information. They followed this up by a preliminary hearing, which is really a probable cause hearing, and to determine if there is enough evidence to bind the case over for trial. That's it. So you've seen a lot of this evidence that people are objecting to, that they don't want in. Some people want some in some way. So if probable cause is found, the Tyler Robinson will be arraigned, and thus a plea deal will be entered. Remember, no plea deal has been entered yet, and a trial will commence. Now, the question will be, depends on what they get in and what they don't get out. My feeling is this will move forward into a trial as this. So Utah does not require a grand jury indictment for such felonies. And the claim of the 14th Amendment, which is out there right now today, which is being used in Section 1 as a vital defense and grounds to exclude evidence, appearance, mistrial, dismissal of charges based on certain preponderance of evidence that they're fighting for to get in. Okay. And they're saying if they can't get this in, or any of this stuff is dismissed in some way that objectifies that uses the media, objectifies the jury in some way to subject them into looking at the evidence and prospecting out an outcome right away that would, I would say, hinder the defense, that they would use this as an argument going forward to appeal in the future. So they don't want anything to disparage this in some way. So that's why they're crossing their I's, dotting the T's, and all this other legal jargon and mumbo jumbo that's going through. The evidence is out there. There's videos out there, all these different things, whether he did it or not, whether the evidence suggests that he has, because there's DNA all over the place, whether Lance Twiggs is involved as an FBI asset, all these different things we'll find out when a trial goes forward. Most people think it's going to go forward. I do think it's going to go forward. There's a lot of stuff that I think I do question that are, let's just say, oddities, anomalies, irregularities, inconsistencies, and things that are very peculiar. Now, the evidence that they hidden, that they show, there's no video that he shot him. They got all this other video, but they didn't shoot him. I'm not saying he did or didn't do it, okay? I'm saying there's a larger conspiracy involved here, and in some way, are we going to see that? And hopefully in the trial, we'll get to that. And I think that's the most important thing. And if he is, then they should execute him. Will he make a deal with his defense team if he's losing this case? It's possible. But the idea that this is going to go forward and you're going to have so many different suppositions and theories put in place and stuff, the question is, how are you going to balance this out? It's really only takes one juror to really just flip the script on this. So if there's a possibility that the state could lose, they might as well make a plea deal. Look, they had more evidence on Carmelo Anthony stabbing the Metcalf kid. They had more evidence against OJ so far, all right? And then look what happened to him. So be careful about, pointing the finger. It's not about whether he did it or did not do it, whether it is that you get justice for Charlie Kirk, because anything can go awry here. And as much evidence you want to throw at this and stick at the wall, okay, it only takes one. Look at how many jurors on the OJ trial that said, well, we thought he did it, but you know what? We hate you white devils and we hate cops. See, that's the problem. You don't know who's going to sit on this jury. You don't know who's going to sit on this panel that's going to have what? Sympathy or empathy for furries and gays and trans and all this, and then you got to bring the Mormons in there. what I'm saying is if you want true justice for Charlie, we're going to have to weigh and balance what that's going to look like, especially if there's something much more nefarious in here. And I think there are a lot of different anomalies than just driving this discussion right through and saying he's guilty and that's it. Let's hang him and move on. No, you want the whole truth and nothing but it. You want everything exposed. You want to know how this was facilitated and orchestrated. How did this come about? Everything to the detail. You can't just, sweep all the particulars under the rug and say, no, he's guilty. That's it. And move on with that. No, I want to know, how did this come about? Why did this come about? All right. You need motivation. You need to prove that the bullets came from the gun. I want all of it. You can't just have certain, let's just say, evidence that wasn't secured, that looks over here as a shiny, glowy object versus other evidence that is really damning in some way, and then say, well, we got two competing pieces of evidence that don't make any sense. Some is corroborated, some is not. You got to take everything into tow. You got to put it all in totality because I want all that stuff. I'm not here rooting for the fucking kid. The kid did it. That's fine. But he's on trial for his life. So you know what? Look at all the bullshit that you went through with Carmelo Anthony. And that fucking guy keeps trying to appeal this and stuff. And they had him dead to rights. They actually have him dead to rights stabbing the Metcalf kid. I didn't see Robinson shooting Charlie Kirk. We don't know how many other people. What about this car and all this stuff? And I'll leave you at that because I don't want to get into this. I'm not willing to fight with people. But if you want true justice for Charlie Kirk, you want to make sure as many people that are a part of this, whether it's a conspiracy or not, to be punished. You can't just have one person and that's it and said this lone gunman did it, just like MLK, just like JFK, just like RFK. Is that what we're going to do? Screw lawfare fuckery? Yeah, exactly. So Tyler Robinson killed by Charlie Kirk. The video shows exactly. Conspiracy theorists, your pathetic little alternate reality fan faction is getting embarrassing. Touch grass. Okay, let's play it.
While conspiracy theorists insist no 30-06 could possibly behave this way, the round blasted into Charlie Kirk's neck, crushed his vertebra, and ricocheted downward toward his heart, only to be stopped dead by his legendary Superman neck of super-dense steel-like bone. It created no exit wound and lodged harmlessly just beneath the skin, which experts hailed as a miracle that saved the bystanders standing behind him. Up on the rooftop, Tyler Robinson didn't just break down his rifle. He shredded it apart in a ridiculous hyperspeed blur using nothing but his bare hands. Then he sprinted across the roof and launched himself off the edge with expert parkour precision. Tyler made the conscious expert decision to reassemble his rifle one last time and place it under a tree in a bush. He then changed back into his blue jeans and maroon t-shirt in hyperspeed. Time.
So a lot of that stuff is wrong in some way. What it was is that apparently there's multiple videos that looks like him, that doesn't look like him, that there's a weapon down him. He's slowly walking up the stairs with the completed Mauser that's assembled. The scope, we don't know where the scope was. We know that there's DNA on the towel and on this. Again, all this stuff is preliminary stuff about moving forward to see if there's enough evidence for probable cause to get in this. Yeah, like I said, I never believed that this kid did it. And if he did, who is he working for or with, or how many people are still yet to be unclaimed and involved yet, or to be outed as involved? That's my point of view, because I think it just doesn't end with this kid. It doesn't. And that's my concern, that, you know what, everything is going to fall onto him, and the real people are going to get it, or the people that orchestrated this, that conspired to do this, that planned this in some way. I find it hard that it was just this kid. I really do, for a lot of different reasons. But again, this case will move forward, and hopefully we'll get to see all the evidence as it is. And one last thing here. Let's put this out. So for everybody who's, let's just say, counting score in some way, I'll show this. If anybody cares. So apparently, Netanyahu's son changed his name. So the new identity for Prime Minister Netanyahu's son changed his name. So I guess if you're trying to be low key and not, let's just say, let everybody know that you're Netanyahu's son, Yair, is now officially known in state documents as Yontan and Han. Okay, I don't know. Maybe Han Solo was taken. I don't know what this name is. Yonatan Han. So if you didn't want anybody to know it, why release it? Yair Netanyahu, the son of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has changed his name. It's now registered with the Israeli authorities under the name Yontan and Han. The Haaretz newspaper reported on Wednesday the change was discovered through tax authority records, which include new documents with his identification number. Now, you can also consider that he's doing this in some way because if something is going to happen to Bibi, or he's going to go to jail, or something happens and stuff, that they want to make sure any of the particulars of money or wealth or anything that's left over is going to go to his son, but they don't want to make it whatever. Why put it on the tax authority records? Why have an identification number? Well, if you're doing this to conceal your name and your reputation, because you're going to go out in the world and stuff, you want everybody to know who you are, or is this more about something else? Financials, wealth and stuff, in some type of things like that. I don't know. Netanyahu's second son, Avner, also chose to use a pseudonym in the past when he purchased an apartment near London. He was registered in British land registry under the name Avenir Segal. Yair's new name is not out of the blue, but rather based on his family history. The name Han is the original last name of the maternal godfather. Interesting. Shamul Ben Artzi. Yatanin is the name of his parental uncle who fell during the operation to rescue hostages from the Entebbe airport in 1976. What's your thoughts about that? I mean, I just saw that and I thought, man, that's really interesting. Why change your name? What is happening that you had to change your name? Are you going to live abroad? Are you going to live in the United States? I mean, you were hanging out in Miami in some way. Are you going to move somewhere else and you don't want anybody to know? You don't want anyone to know for tax reasons. You want to know about the name on the registry, if you're going to buy property or rent or what have you. All these things, you just don't want to have anybody know who you are. And for, obviously security reasons, that's out the door. But this is all being put out there. So maybe there's something else out there we just don't know. But I just thought that, isn't that kind of odd? If you're trying to hide it, why would you have a paper pick that up and spread that out? Yeah, not their real name. That's a good one, Aloha Mom. Obviously, that's a good point. Was that the highlight? That's not their real name? How many names are they listed under? So they just change their names and they just, they move through the minutia and they disappear. Good point. Good point. So Nick Sorter puts this out. President Trump on the plane today announces filing a rehearing for the U.S. Supreme Court on the birthright citizenship after an anchor baby hospital was discovered in Texas. Uh-oh. Signs and billboards are being put up all over southern border and Mexico advertising birthright citizenship, delivery starting at $4,000. Fucking disgusting. That is a crime, and therefore the Supreme Court ruling is wrong. I'll be asking for a rehearing by the United States Supreme Court immediately. Wow. This miscarriage of justice will destroy America if they don't change their absolutely insane decision. U.S. citizenship is not for sale. So it's possible right now that President Trump can get them to look at this based upon new evidence of what they're suggesting and what this is going to come out. Signs and billboards are being put up all over the southern border and Mexico advertising birthright citizenship. Likewise, similar signs are going up all over the country. It's a scam. Here it is. Nobody saw this coming. American citizenship is not for sale. In fact, that is a crime, and therefore the Supreme Court's ruling is wrong. I'll be asking for a rehearing by the United States Supreme Court immediately. What's your thoughts about that? I think that's great. I think eventually, the question is, can we get the Supreme Court to address this again? Will they look at this again based on new information? That their decision, could lead to a rampant amount of illegal citizenship all over the place that is being bought and paid for, and they're the cause of it. Will they be able to, in tow, look at this and say, you know what? Yeah, we don't want to be a part of that. I don't know if in some way they're going to acknowledge this. I don't know if they're going to get another hearing about this. The question will be, will they be able to? Will they have a viability to address that in a different manner and say, look, let's look at this in a different manner. Your decision now has let's just say, reached another crescendo in a different manner. Maybe you did not portend to be. And that has to be highlighted and addressed. And maybe you have to narrow your scope in such a way that affects this, that we don't have all these people paying for the birthright citizenship from every fucking country in the world. I think that is something that they might consider based upon how they're going to readdress this. I think so. You're going to have to. I don't know what Congress is going to do. You could set up shop with putting all these different facets and laws to undercut, bifurcate in some way, and only Congress can do it. You know, it's not going to be an executive order that's going to hold and stick like a piece of chewing gum or spit or what have you, or glue. You need Congress to actually do anything. But does Congress do anything to begin with? No, they don't. Congress is useless. It really doesn't matter anymore. And so maybe you're addressing it in a different in a fashion in some way. All right. Because look, you got 4 months away, 4.5 months away. There's not enough time for us to, be reflexive about fixing it. Maybe he can get an emergency order in tow. Maybe he can get some people in there. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But the fact that he said that on the plane heading back, I thought that was pretty good. So I don't know if it's good for you. It's good for me. But we'll see how the court. They can easily not take this up, like they've taken up many cases and said, no, we're not going to do it. All right. That's our show for tonight. I want to thank everybody for supporting the platform. On the leaderboard, Thea with 1.3, Darla 1,000, and Senior Polo with 1,000. Thank you all for supporting the platform. Originally, the birthright was intended for slave babies. Yeah. And they misinterpreted Section 5 completely. And now it's out of control because every country on the planet, and there's 196 countries, will want to be vying for, citizenship, and they'll buy it and sell it. And that was not its intention. Now, you're not going to get a constitutional amendment to overturn it. It's just not going to happen. There's no way. There's no will to do that. You're going to have separate laws in place to cut this out. That's it. But I think in some way, if we can redress this grievance that they created now, and they show their folly in their decision, now that would be really interesting to see. Well, that's our show for tonight. I want to thank everybody out there. Release the gold pills. I will return on Friday for the call-in show. Have a great night. Be well, be safe, be smart, guys. Take care. Ciao, Bella.